Is it always better to buy new? Or are there times when reusing stuff for new ways on the boat is a better way to go? Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. Today I'm talking about repurposing boat gear, some of the joys and some of the challenges. Today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by SailDauntless.com, your personalized sailing adventure in the most beautiful locations. Experience the utmost in luxury cruising just the way you want it. Get back into the sailing groove on board this beautiful 52-foot sailboat, where every single detail is taken care of for you. Now booking in Italy and Croatia for summer 2021. Use coupon code SD15 for 15% off any 7-night all-inclusive sailing charter in the Mediterranean, July through September 2021. Ready to live the dream? SailDauntless.com. Let our experience inspire yours. That's SailDauntless.com. One of the things when you're working on the boat is the constant balance and tension between money and time. It takes time to redo a boat. It takes time to do any boat project. And if you're like most of us, you're running hard up against that budget and the fact that money is not endless. So what about recycling and reusing material? Isn't that always the best way to go? Well, if we come back to that tension, you have to realize that when you're repurposing boat material, and I don't mean that I'm taking the same stove that I had before and I'm going to put it back into the boat and reuse the same thing. I'm not talking about taking my VHF off of the boat and then while I redo the chart table, I'm going to put that VHF back in there. That's a reuse that just doesn't make any sense to do something different with. But if you have a VHF that is broken and you first bought it in 1994 and you could, instead of spending the couple $100 on a new one, you decide it's better to take it apart and fix it, you absolutely can do that. But be aware that there is a time cost to reusing stuff that isn't ready to go. We've had this with a lot of parts on the boat. Jeremy's been keeping wood bits that we've taken off the boat. Some of them we've never actually had on the boat. They were off the boat when we bought the boat in 1992. And when we got a whole pile of stuff from Mike, the guy we bought the boat from, it included a number of teak and mahogany parts that he had taken off the boat and never put back on. And we never put them on. So we've been hauling this wood around for eons. And now, as we're refitting Calypso, it's actually kind of fun because we're finding ways to use some of those pieces of wood on the boat for the very first time. We love the idea of repurposing. From a budgetary standpoint, it makes no sense to pitch something that's perfectly good only to have to turn around and buy something that costs maybe 5 times as much as that original stuff did and doesn't have remotely the same kind of character. Almost more than the budgetary aspect, though, is we love the stories that come with repurposing things. We're going to look at our galley counters that are old Corian pieces that friends of ours gave us when they redid their land kitchen. I've been wanting Corian counters on the boat since we bought it, and I'm so excited that we're going to finally have them. But better than that is we're going to look at those counters and know that that's friendship right there in a counter. That's a cool story that I couldn't buy with anything that I bought at any store. Yes, did those galley counters take us longer to deal with than if we bought something new? Absolutely. Before we even started to work on them, we needed to take off the old supports and remove a lot of the glue drops and figure out how we were going to lay it out. Small price to pay for a really great story, for sure. Another story and a repurposing of material. We have an engine face. There's a piece of wood that is going on front of the engine that serves as the face of it. And Jeremy needed to put spacers on the side of the engine face so that when the engine face lifts off, it will clear the galley fiddles. Those spacers are built from old pin rail sections that are way better in theory than in practice. These pin rail sections look like they're a nautical version of a banister, only about 2.5 inches high, with a flat piece on the bottom and a flat piece on the top, and these spindles, these intricate, detailed spindles in between, maybe spaced a couple inches apart. They look incredible, and they attract dust like nobody's business. But they're solid teak. So what did Jeremy do? He cut the pin rails off, and he's using the top parts, the flat parts, as those spacer sections. I think that's kind of neat. It took a long time to do that. You have to clean up each piece. You have to cut them off. You have to clean them up. You have to fit them. But still, it's kind of a neat repurposing of something. My favorite repurposing and favorite story is with wood that's never been on Calypso before. Actually, it's with wood that hasn't ever been on a boat before, because it was bought to put on a boat that never actually got going. Jeremy's in the process of redoing the forward hatch. Okay, it's not a complete redo because he cut off about 3 inches of the top round of the forward hatch, making it lighter, more streamlined, and more in line with the look of the boat. There are teak strips that are on the top of that hatch. And these strips of teak were purchased decades ago by his father for a cruising boat that he never got to go cruising on. When Jeremy's mom went through her garage after Alan died, she sent us a lot of Alan's tools and boat parts. And among those was a number of long teak strips that Alan never got to use for a project he never told us what he'd been planning for. Knowing Alan, he bought it because it was a super great deal and he knew he would figure out a way to use it afterwards. We've stored these strips for a lot of years just because. And just because has arrived. The hatch looks spectacular. The story feels even better. It is really cool to look at the boat and see so many parts of other lives and iterations of the boat in all these nooks and crannies. It's very practical because we're not purchasing new stock. It certainly is cheaper on the budget. But it takes a lot of time to reuse these things. It takes a lot of time to craft the stories that go into the boat parts that will be part of the boat as we continue to cruise around. Do you have some stories from cool boat parts on your boat? I can't wait to hear about them when we share an anchorage sometime. Thank you so much for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. We come to you live, well, sort of live, twice a week with ideas, tips, tricks, and stories. Yes, and stories from cruising life before it happens, while it happens, and after it happens. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for sharing us with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe, and you'll never miss an episode. Have a spectacular week.